Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the Horror Fan 88 channel. I'm back once again for another video, and I'm very excited to bring you my ranking of the Scream franchise, all 6 films. I've been really looking forward to this because this is one of my favorite horror franchises, and honestly, it was kind of a tough ranking because to me, this is one of the most consistent horror franchises, and I don't hate a single film in the franchise. I think that even the ones I would rank lower, I still have a love for. Um, so with that being said, of course, as you can see in my background, I have decorated with some of my Scream stuff. And of course, as a disclaimer, I just want to say that I will be talking some spoilers for Scream 1 through 5, as well as getting a little bit more into Scream 6 when I get to it. I did do a spoiler-free review if you want to check that out. I won't be giving like major spoilers away for Scream 6, just wanted to talk a little bit more about it. But yeah, and as of course, this is just my own personal ranking. We may not all have the same exact one, but that is okay. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into my number 6. Coming in at number 6 for me is going to be Scream 3 from 2000. Now, of course, I hate to have this film so low because to me, this is without a doubt the most fun and entertaining Scream film. It's probably the most goofiest as well, but often it's regarded as the worst one of the franchise. And I mean, let's be honest, if Scream 3 is like known as like the worst one, that's not bad because I wouldn't even consider this to be one of the worst horror movies ever, let alone one of the worst of the franchises of horror and stuff. I think it's fun, it's entertaining. I love to have the cast back. Of course, David Arquette, Courtney Cox, Neve Campbell. And from what I understand, there was like a scheduling thing with Neve Campbell, so that's why she wasn't in as much of this movie as she was in like some of the other ones in the franchise, but I still think she does a great job in the film. And the fact that I don't hate the killer reveal of this movie with Roman, because it's pretty crazy that out of the franchise, he's the only killer to not have an accomplice. He's the only solo Ghostface. And I think, I mean, he didn't do a bad job. Of course, his final plan didn't succeed. But I noticed with this franchise, certain certain things in the franchise that people have problems with, always seems to be the killer reveal in the third act. That always seems to make it or break it for a lot of people. I'm completely fine with it. Roman's motives and the fact that he's Sidney's half-brother and, all that. And of course, with this film, it takes on the whole meta nature of the trilogies. They even have the little cameo from Jamie Kennedy explaining the rules of a trilogy and how it all comes together. And yeah, and I just think this movie's so much fun. I think that the Hollywood setting is really neat, having like all these characters from Stab 3 portraying our main characters. Like, you got like 2 Gale Weathers in this movie, and it's fun. It really is fun. So even though Scream 3 is my last place, I still love it. So, number 6, Scream 3. Coming in at number 5 is actually going to be Scream 2022, or Scream 5. So as I said in my spoiler-free review for 6, when this came out, I was pretty hesitant because it was the first one in the franchise, not directed by Wes Craven. And I think overall, the Radio Silence guys, they did a fantastic job, and I do think that the franchise is in good hands. Now, of course, when this came out, I saw it in theaters twice, and I liked it, but then I didn't love it. It's definitely grown on me more over time, of course. But having like all these new characters that are supposed to be carrying the franchise, and I liked them in this film, but I loved them in part 6, and we will get to that. But the new characters like Samantha, Tara, Chad, Mindy, I think that they're great. I really do. And of course, you have your returning legacy characters, Sidney, Gale, Dewey, and I will say that I have felt for a while in this franchise like we need to raise the stakes. We need to do something that's like, holy shit, they actually did that. And spoiler alert, they killed my man Dewey in this movie. Dewey was probably my favorite character in the franchise. And when that happened, I was like, oh shit, they actually killed him. So, yeah. And of course, with the killer reveal, this is like maybe the only film in the franchise that I actually was just like, I guessed the killers, like on the first try. And I'm not trying to be like, haha, I guessed the killers. It was just like, watching the film, I was picking up on subtle details, and I'm like, that's suspicious. And then it turned out to be those two characters. And I'm like, holy shit, I got it. So yeah, Scream 5, some good kills, good acting here and there, and I just think overall it was a good return. I could definitely tell this time they maybe were playing it a little safe for it being their first Scream film, but overall I really enjoyed it. So yeah, number 5, Scream 2022. Number 4 is actually going to be Scream 4 or Scriforum or whatever. So there's definitely some nostalgia for me with this film because this was the first Scream that I saw in theaters, and I loved it. And it came out a decade after Scream 3, and then Scream 5 came out a decade after Scream 4. But yeah, I think that all the returning characters were great. This movie, much like 5, tried to introduce a bunch of new characters, which didn't end well for a lot of them. But yeah, and of course at the time I think that this was probably the most violent Scream movie because, you know, I remember seeing, you know, I believe her name was Olivia, her death scene, where, you know, when Sydney runs up to the room and the walls are painted in blood and her guts are spilled out all over the bed. Like, the whole, like, slicing guts open is not new in this franchise. I mean, it happened to Steve in the first Scream, who was the first kill. But it would just look so gnarly in this movie. And of course, you know, you got some cool Ghostface lines. Like, I think my favorite Ghostface, like, line in this film is where he's talking to Sydney, and he says, "I'm gonna slit your eyelids in half so you don't blink when I stab you in the face." I was like, damn. Now, really, I think my only problem with this movie, like my only slight nitpick, would be the filter for this movie. And I know it's a lot of people talk about it, but this movie has a weird, shiny filter over it for the whole movie. And it feels so weird, and it sticks out because none of the other films in the franchise look like that. So, you know, I really don't know what happened. But honestly, it doesn't take me out of the movie and destroy my viewing of the film. And when it comes to the killer reveals, you know, with Jill and Charlie, a lot of people feel that Jill is the best Ghostface in the franchise because she came, like, the closest to actually succeeding in her plan. And, you know, I guess I never really thought who would be my favorite Ghostface, but she's a great one. And yeah, Scream 4, I have a lot of love for it. Kills are great. So yeah, and of course this film also introduced a franchise favorite with Kirby, who is back in Scream 6, which is awesome because for a whole decade people were like, no, Kirby's alive, because as you can see, and then in the commentary, and it's just cool to finally have her back in the franchise. So yeah, Scream 4. Coming in at my number 3 is actually going to be Scream 2 from 1997. For the longest time, this was my favorite sequel in the franchise. I've always had a lot of fun with it. Now, of course, as I forgot to mention in my past 2 spots, like I said, Scream 3 tackled trilogies. Scream 5 tackled requels. Scream 4 tackled remakes. Scream 2, of course, tackled sequels. And of course, you got Randy in this film who's explaining the rules of a sequel, like the body count's always higher, more blood, more gore, carnage candy, you know, stuff like that. And, you know, of course, love all the returning characters, Sydney, Dewey, Gale, Randy. It's pretty cool that they actually have Cotton Weary in this film as like a main character. Yeah, love the college setting in the film. The kills are pretty cool. And when it comes to the killer reveals, you know, Mickey and Mrs. Loomis, I don't mind them. I really like them. And I think that Mickey just feels so different amongst the killers because he really wasn't like the other ones. The other ones want to finish their goal and, you know, never get found out, never get seen again. Mickey was like, nah, I want to get caught. As he says in the movie, Billy was a sick fuck who tried to get away with it. Mickey wants to get caught. So he's crazy like that. But yeah, love the characters, love this movie. Always been one of my go-to fun sequels. So yeah, Scream 2. Coming in at my number 2 is actually going to be Scream 6. And believe me, when I saw this in theaters, I was not expecting this to be my second favorite in the franchise, and I know I'm not alone on that. I've seen tons and tons of people as well say this is their favorite sequel in the franchise. So, yeah, and I had an absolute blast with it. I like the change of having this one take place in New York. They've changed it up a few times. Like Scream 3 took place in Hollywood, but I really like the New York setting in this film. And for me, I think that the kills were probably the most violent in the franchise in this one. This might be the most badass ghost face. I'm not talking about the people, like the killer reveal and stuff. I'm just talking about the overall ghost face doing the killing, because this one's brutal as shit and probably the least clumsy in the franchise, because as we know, Ghostface can be very clumsy. But this one, not so much. I think that there's some great chase scenes in here. The subway scene is excellent. The whole store scene is excellent. I just love a lot about this movie. And when it comes to the characters, look, I know this film being the first one in the franchise not to have Sidney Prescott, it sucks. If they decide, if they get her back or she decides to come back in 7, that's awesome. But I really didn't feel like this movie had to have Sidney in it. Because, now you're following your core 4, as they're called in this film. Sam, Tara, Chad, and Mindy. And I went from liking them in 5 to loving them in this film. And I'm like, okay, I can definitely follow these characters from now on, because I just think they're great. And of course, one thing that a lot of people have problem with in this movie is the plot armor. Which, to me, the whole plot armor thing in this franchise has been around for a long time. People surviving shit that they very well shouldn't. Like a character could get stabbed 20, 30 times, and then by the end of it, they're like, we got another one here, and you're like, ain't no fucking way they survived that. I just look past it just to have a good time. Another thing I've seen people talk about is the third act and the killer reveal being disappointing, and it just didn't bother me. For the most part, I just had a great time watching this film, and I think it's exciting, and yeah, I think everyone did a fantastic job in this film. Scream 6 to me is badass, so my number 2, Scream 6. But my number 1, of course, without any doubt, is going to be Scream from 1996. Oh, such a great film. Of course, as we all know, in the mid-90s, the big slasher franchises were putting out what most people would consider to be their weaker entries. I don't mind them, but the slasher genre in general was becoming tired, and then here comes Scream, and it just goes crazy. And Wes Craven did a fantastic job directing this. All the actors and characters in the film are fantastic. Nev, David Arquette, Courtney Cox, Jamie Kennedy, Skeet Ulrich, Matthew Lillard, just everyone. It's so great. I think the kills are really good, and this, of course, has one of the greatest opening scenes in horror history with Drew Barrymore. I love the look of Ghostface, even though that is just like a cheap Halloween costume. To me, it's very effective, and I love the way it looks on film. And yeah, this being so meta and explaining rules of horror movies, like you can never have sex, you can never drink or do drugs, never say you'll be right back, because you won't be back. I'll be right back. Yeah, I absolutely love Scream. It's one of my favorite horror films of all time, and it's just fantastic. So with that being said, that was my Scream franchise ranking, all 6 films. There is also 3 seasons of this TV series that I didn't rank, but I may talk about down the line somewhere. But I hope you enjoyed this. Once again, we may not all have the same exact ranking, but that's okay. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your ranking in the comments. And with that being said, thank you. I will see you on the next one. Peace out.